All right, it is indeed a very, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It is another edition of The Tackle, the 22nd of February 2023. We apologize for that technical issue. Tulikuwa tumekuja kidogo alafu tukapotea. Watawa shida kimitambo kidogo. But it is indeed a very, very good morning to you. It's a bright morning here in Nairobi. The sun is shining, as you can see. And the Lord is good also. Mambo inaendelea kuzidi. Mambo inachemka kidogo pia kwa serikali. Mambo inachemka kwa opposition. Mambo ni mengi. Wanasiasa wako hapa watatuambia mimi ni bishop. Kama kawaida unajua mimi ni bishop, mambo ya siasa sielewi. Kwa hivyo niko na siasa hapa ambao wataweza kutuambia leo siasa Wednesday. What are you going to have a conversation on who is fooling who and who is playing who and what we look about what are some of the things that we should look forward to as we the days go. We're also looking at the supplementary budget that has been done, the budget cuts, the budget cuts that has come with it, and will it be that final way out of the economic issue that we have? Kama kawaida lazima tuende mbele za Mungu tuombe tugurudi basi na kuja kujua nani ameweza kuamka. Lakini kama kawaida, please don't join like when you like, we get to know that you're watching us, and I play like, please share. When you share, you give someone else an opportunity to watch the broadcast. It is a Siasa Wednesday edition of the 22nd of February 2023, and it begins right now. Mighty Father, we come before you this morning. We worship you, glorify your name. Thank you for another day. Thank you for the guests that have joined us this morning. We also thank you for the tacklers who have joined us online. May you meet them at their point of individual needs. And even as we have this conversation, may it edify the fabric of this country. We pray, trusting and believing. Amen. Haya, nimeona kuna ngona hapa. Niko na Ruth Ambogo. It's the first time hii mwaka ndiye ameingia kwa mara ya kwanza. Good morning to you, Ruth.
Good morning. How are you?
Salama sana, habari yako?
Kuna mabadiliko hapa.
Hapa pana mambo ni mopi.
Sasa tunaenda international.
Hapa tunaenda kwa international. Sita yako kama huko line pass hapo.
Kama ziko line niko nje.
Sasa inafaa unajipanga unakuwa raha.
Niko ndani. I hope this is not a private entity where shareholders it is not governed by shareholding. Ukikosa kukuja muda mrefu unatupwa nje.
Wewe hiyo shareholding yako bado iko hicho.
Original shareholding.
So usikweko na wasiwasi. Wewe mambo yako iko sawa. Good to see you. Adway, good morning.
Good morning, Bishop.
Good to see you. Asifiwe sana.
Good to see you too.
Hata mnatembea mnakuja kwa kasataka. Ndio mnakuja tofua. Wale hata chakula
wewe. Watu wa maombi.
We walk into the house of the Lord and we walk out fulfilled.
But you walk in with something.
That's what the word says.
Just don't walk into the house of the Lord
empty-handed.
He who goes before the man of God lives with plenty in his hands. Ama vipi, Bishop?
Naona nini ya mheshimu.
Go before the man of God.
Naona siku hizi mheshimu watumishi. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, Happy New Year too.
The last time we talked, you were running for a seat. I don't know what happened. Ulifanywa ile kitu. You had done that thing.
Kura hazikutosha.
Kura hazikutosha.
Lakini tunazichanga tunaendelea.
Haya, changa. Mambo itafika. Kura isipotosha unangoja tena unasubiri halafu unaanza unajaribu tena.
Hakuna haja ya kuvuruga wananchi. There's always another chance.
Kabisa. There's always another day.
Wenye wamechukua.
Hata ndugu unaona dada yangu hapa Ruth pia alikuwa anaomba nini ya kuwakilisha kwa wanawake. Ikafika kwa mahali akasema hata amesuka.
Akasema wakati bado mambo yalikuwa mengi, masaa ilikuwa machache.
Mambo ilijamuka kidogo.
Kabisa. Tusirudi huko kwa sasa. Wacha tufocus.
All right, it's good to see you guys. A lot has been happening, of course, on the political scene. A lot of crazy things are going on. Of course, serikali inaomba, sasa opposition pia imeamua imeachana na maandamano kidogo. Pia leo wanaomba. So we have a praying nation. What a beautiful nation to live in. So everybody is praying. Serikali inaomba, opposition inaomba. Kama Yesu hajaishuka Kenya ndio atashuka round hii mwaka vile inaenda. That's why is up this morning. I've skipped you. Good morning, Gerald. Good morning to you, my brother. And not get it, government only rewarding loyalties. Maze. Makam Jom Diwa, good morning Jimmy, good morning to you. Maina Wanjoki, finally leo nimewahi kipindi. Masaa imekuwa noma. Karibu sana ndugu yangu. It's been a while. Maina Wanjoki. Andrew Yasal, morning, tuned in from Kawa, Nakuru. Asante sana ndugu. Dan Kancheria Kali. Asante. Mama Julius, great topics. Asante. Moses Kamau, good morning to you Bishop Mwanzangu. Mimi na Kamau sisi mambo ya mbinguni ndio tunasaidia watu visa ya kuingia mbinguni. Mimi na Kamau ndio tunapeana. Hii mambo mengine ya duniani tumewachia. Maana Wanjoki Nujasi. Koristo ndio mingi. Pole sana na Njoki, pole sana kwa baridi pia Denokip. Mambo imechamuka, mambo hapa inachamuka, imeshikana kidogo. Nzinza Shalo, good morning. Good job my girl Ambogo. Good to see you Nzinza. Alkido KE, good morning and following Asante Wilson Chipkwon. Good morning Gerald. Good morning to you. Akido, yes sir. Asante. Good morning sir. Good morning to my brother John Kibor. Good to see you. My brother John Kibor. Good morning to Bitok. Good morning to you. Sige, well done. Good morning Bitok. Good morning. And I hope you're doing well this morning. Also let us know anything that you wish that we discuss this morning. Pia utuambie pia kama unatusikia kwa njia shwari na unatuona kwa njia shwari zaidi. I want us to start with something which I think will be very timely, and it's about the CASs. I think tuanze na hapo kwanza. And all of us here, except me, I'm an old man. The two of you are young people. The two of you are young people. You are the youth, the leaders of tomorrow. Now,
you know that's how the young people has come.
If tomorrow never comes, that's how it looks like for young people. It never comes. So we have a CS list that just came out, and it's made up of you know the constitution of the CS nominees that have been forwarded to the president. I don't know. What do you guys think about it? I'll start with Serikali. Wasabondi wanakaranga list. Serikali Nodweyo. Hii nini ya chingu unatupa huko nje ndio unaingia kwa studio. Sawa. Nodweyo. Alright. What do you think about the CAS nominees?
Good morning to our viewers. And it's good to be back. Happy New Year to everyone. Unajua mi bado niko January.
Ndio naona.
I saw the CAS list.
People are living in abundance.
I saw the CAS list. It's a bag of mixed emotions.
Okay.
Yeah, of course we have a constitution that gives everyone the right to apply for any position in the public service that they deem that they qualify for. And the PSC, without any reservations or any bias, has the obligation to shortlist whomever they believe is qualified for that position. But on the flip side of it, there are some names I saw on that list, and the other end I'm asking myself, what didn't you do as a governor that you want to do as an errand boy for a CS? That's the first. Now, that's where now, okay, morality cannot be constitutionalized. But you know leadership starts with you, one, leading yourself. Leadership, I defined it using two words: creating new value and adding value to the existing value systems. That's how, when you talk about creating new value and adding value, we talk about exit strategies. And as a leader, part of the expectation of the people you lead is that you, as a person defining and purporting yourself to be a leader, should have the conscience and the moral standing to be able to create structures that can then define the future leadership. Some of those structures, the key one is mentorship. Mentorship is not about you, my friend Bishop, lecturing me about what I should do as a leader to become a good leader. Mentorship, the best form of mentorship, is allowing me to walk beside you as you walk that path. And then, as you exit, giving me an opportunity to step into those shoes. And there must be timelines onto myself, assuming I'm a leader. So that's my main reservation, that someone has risen to that point where you've been a governor, but you still believe you are the only one who can occupy all public positions, or you must be in the public service, and you refuse to create room by insisting that you must be the only one. So I think for me, that is a bit of, and it demonstrates the lack of what I call next level progression and lack of post-election ambition for politicians. Because at the end of the day, it's not right. It's not right in a country with abundance of youthful leadership, very, very ambitious and visionary leaders that I believe should be given such opportunities to learn. Actually, in my opinion, Gerald, the CAS to me should be an avenue and an opportunity for youthful visionaries from all corners of Kenya to get an opportunity to enter into top level public service. It should be an opportunity to be able to walk into the shoes of the men of today, so that tomorrow, we don't have a gap like sometimes we do. You realize that if you look into our political and leadership spaces, you realize that we have a lot of gaps. And some of those gaps are caused by leaders who do not know when to move to the level of mentorship, when to move to the level of becoming political and leadership fathers, so that you now give an opportunity to your sons to also become that what you are, or even better. Yeah.
All right. Ruth, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, it is very rare to find government criticizing their own actions, and that for me is a sign of maturity, that we can be able to call out wrong when we see it, regardless of whichever side we stand, politically speaking. And I do agree with the sentiments of my brother here that indeed positions such as CAS positions are supposed to be a training ground for younger people who have not had access to government but have the potential of leading, to be given an opportunity to learn, to be given an opportunity to grow, so that in the future, when we are talking about transitioning of governments, when we are talking about looking for people who will fill up positions, we don't lack in terms of talent, we don't lack in terms of institutional memory, then these are the people who can be appointed to even become CSs and PSs. The current government right now is facing a huge problem in the sense that some of the people that had been appointed as CSs and mostly CSs don't seem to know what they're doing in their various offices. And this could be an explanation, the best explanation that one could give for this could be that they did not have training grounds to be able to learn on what exactly do you do when you are holding a position of influence. What exactly do you do when you are in a position of public service? How are you supposed to conduct yourself? How are you supposed to run your affairs? And so we thought that these CAS positions are supposed to offer such an opportunity for young people. It is very saddening when you see someone who was vying who was presenting themselves as a future kingpin, for instance, of the Luo community, one Evans Kidero, now scrambling for CAS positions with young people, It is also saddening to see people who had been appointed as nominated members of parliament in the last government also presenting themselves on that list. People who have been nominated once or twice as MPs, as senators on that particular list. People who have vied and ran as senators for a period of one term, vied for governor, failed and lost, now appearing on that list, So it makes you wonder what kind of appointment system do we have in this country, And for me, the question will boil even deeper to parastatals. The question boils deeper to other institutions that still have gaps and spaces that need to be filled. That what kind of criteria will be used to select the kind of people who land into those particular roles? Are we just going for people who supported us during the campaigns and ignoring talent, real skills, real people who actually have what it takes to lead those particular roles that are available? Because if you remember during the Uhuru Kenyatta regime, when he unleashed the list of CASs, one thing that seemed to particularly stand out was the fact that most of the people who were given an opportunity were young people who had either tried vying for the first time in politics, people like, I can't remember his name, but the one who was up until the time of elections was holding the CAS for sports. I keep forgetting his name. He's a former student. Yes, former student leader, Zach Kinuthia. The likes of David Osian, who seem to have a future in politics, So one would think that given that criteria, and mostly it was held by young people, so you'd think that this government would actually look at some of the failures of the previous government and try to improve on it. But the case is not what is happening right now. It is very unfortunate for us seeing former governors. In fact, I saw somebody commenting and saying that there are two people on the list who served both as governor and deputy governor of a particular county on that particular list. You ask yourself, what were you not able to achieve during the period of time that you were governor and deputy governor that you think you will now achieve as a CAS? A position that, if compared, it's almost as if we are looking at an interview where people are going to interview for the secretarial position, and then you find a retiree coming to apply for the same position, scrambling for the same position with people who are just fresh out of campus, When young people who are in universities, who have potential to lead, who have aspirations to lead, look at these things, you find them giving up on ever thinking of joining leadership, because they think this is a preserve of the people, those who know them Mkubwa. It is a preserve of those who are very close to the people who are holding power. But as a young person coming from nowhere with potential to be able to lead, with potential to be able to be given an opportunity to exercise their skills, then you lose hope. You're like, I mean, there's no hope for me at all. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what is also the possibility, Odwe, that it's young people who are not going aggressively for these positions? Because I think gone is a time when young people used to believe that they're entitled. You know, the entitlement also of youth is another impediment to youth progress. That you think that because you're a young person, you should be given things. What is the possibility that even young people are not also aggressively going for these positions and pushing for their interest? Odwe?
No, Bitok, one thing that we need to realize is that this list of 224 people that was finally shortlisted was coming from a list of about 5,000 people. Okay. Do you want to tell me that young people did not apply for these particular jobs? I'm seeing a lot of young people who applied even for, forget about the CAS positions. When the chief officer positions were being announced, the CEC positions or chief executive officer positions were being announced, so many young people applied. But then you always find yourself in a situation where Mukubwa says, the following, some of these people have to be on that particular list, you know? And I think that is why the courts had a problem with this whole CAS position things. That and one of the questions that was before the courts was, what criteria will be used to be able to shortlist who needs to be set up for appointment for CAS, you know? And those are some of the things that needed to have been sorted out. Once the courts gave a go-ahead, some of the things that needed to have been laid, rules that needed to have been laid on the ground would have been rules such as, we say that these are only preserved for young people, you know? We must get to a point where we are deliberate about the future of young people in this country, where you literally say the following positions are purely left for the young people, you know? And we're not saying that we need special treatment, but, you know, in a system where money speaks, in a system where connections speak, in a system where how well you're known or close to your party leader, to the president, to the people who hold power positions, in such a system, competing as a young person becomes very difficult.
Right. Could it be also that we are not going for the things that we should be going for?
The bishop. Might you just have consecrated the sacrament of matrimony upon us? Because I heard you mention Odwe and then she was quick to pick up.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
A fire was still on, so it was okay for her to pick it up.
This has always been my position on this, the issue of the youth not being aggressive enough. What is this aggression? Who has this aggressionometer or something like that measures this aggressiveness? Some of us have been there and we had what it took to be where some of those are. Some of us were even better. I know a lot of young people who have been in the mud but never got the opportunity. Sometimes it's usually said when the hyena wants to chew its own children, they paint it as goats. We have had a system where people have chosen to paint young people as lazy, not aggressive, opportunists, quick service seekers and stuff like that. Yes, even among the old generation, there are those who are as lazy, more lazy than even the young people. What am I trying to say? Unless PSC gives us the list of the 5,000 plus, and we are able to look at the list and we don't find any young people, you cannot come here and then you blanketly call out young people that they did not apply. Yeah. The fact that we've not seen that list, we cannot come here and say they did not. I know so many people who did, by the way. Yesterday, I was talking to a certain colleague of a certain friend of mine. He'd also contested for a certain seat. He had applied, and many others. Like I mentioned before, PSC has a right to shortlist based on qualifications, and everyone has a right to apply. But I talked about the issue of leadership and morality, and
did
now
you apply?
The graduation of...
Did you apply? Did you apply Odwe? Let's tuanze na hapo kwanza. Did you apply?
No, I had different dreams. I have a different path, so I'll not say I did not
Ambogo,
apply.
Did you apply?
sisi tulishaambiwa hii serikali iko na wenyewe.
No, imeanza juzi.
It is a waste of time. Hii serikali iko na wenyewe.
Mambo ya rigiji ametangaza juzi. 2 days ago.
I mean, you don't need to be we are not strangers in Jerusalem. We saw how the CS positions were awarded. We saw how the PS positions were awarded. We've been seeing how government parastatal how the recent government parastatal positions are being awarded. So you ask yourself, what is the point? Because honestly, one thing that I'll tell you for sure is that even for those PS positions, especially for the PS positions, I saw quite a number of people who are supporters of Raila Odinga who applied for those positions and were shortlisted. But did any of them make it, So this government has clearly set the tone from the word go by telling us that this is how it is. If you look at how Uhuru Kenyatta appointed CASs in the first list of CASs, you could clearly see that he was not focusing purely on people who supported him during the campaigns. There were so many divergent faces there, people like Kina Osian, the likes of handshake. I understand it was the handshake government, but he could have chosen to say
guys, that, on a serious note,
he could have chosen to say that I am only focusing on rewarding the people who supported me, which is clearly the tone that this government has set. From the word go, you can clearly tell that if you did not support this government, you're out. You're out completely.
So let me ask you guys,
regardless of whether you're qualified or not,
guys,
you are wasting
on a very
time.
serious note. So yes. I have 2 young people here who are complaining that young people are not being given opportunities. Right? Let's get this right. 2 young people, including me, Bishop, who is the elder. 2 young people, both of them are complaining that young people are not being given opportunities. On this case of CASs, and none of the 2 applied. Isn't the Lord good? And then you're saying the youth are being accused wrongly.
But Bitok, we also have to ask you, did you apply? Because where was your elder? In fact, your friend advice has told me to ask you, how come he did not see your name on that CAS list? Na tulisema hizo ni kazi za vijana.
Mimi ni mzee. Lazima nikasema hata niache vijana.
And then by the way, Bishop, to take the story even further, where is the face of hustlers in this list, that the proposed list of CSs? Where is Mama Ambogo on that list? Where is Mutu wa Boda Boda on that list? And yet the entire narrative of this current government when they were campaigning was that hii ni serikali ya wasiojiweza, hii ni serikali ya Mama Mboga, hii ni serikali ya Boda Boda, hii ni serikali ya hustler. Where are they? That particular list. Are those governors, the former governors that are on that list, are they wakulima wadogo?
Where is Mama Mboga?
Bishop, the first thing I want to counter your false narrative that just because we did not apply, we should not mention. Justice is universal. When Rosa Parks led the Montgomery bus boycott, it's not like she never had the privilege. She could have sat on that bus and gone home. As a person, you've said you are a bishop, you are focusing on your ministry.
On the flock.
As a person, I have a path, and that's leadership. Understanding your vision, understanding your currencies, and choosing a path. When you choose that path, it doesn't mean that this other path must be blocked or broken. There are those who need it. That is my perspective. There's a path I've chosen and I'm pursuing it.
So where are you representing?
And that is not in line. As a leader, I represent the over 20 million young people.
That you are not among. Do you know how many do you know that applied that did not get it?
I know around 25.
When did you count? When did you count?
No, we have these conversations. And then there's something I would like to point out. I think there's a narrative that has always been peddled, that hustlers must be Mama Mbogas and Boda Boda guys. I think we had the patience of explaining this so many times, that a hustler doesn't necessarily need to be someone by the roadside hawking fruits. A hustler can be someone like me who from nowhere and no privileged background, through understanding themselves and their currency, can choose a path and pursue it righteously to a level of not just self-aggrandizement or self-achievement, but to a level of societal recognition and something like that. You achieve something in life through your own path and by your own effort. And yes, we have. And another thing I want to also mention to my sister is that we were also very specific that being a hustler does not mean you must be poor. Qualifications for hustlership is not poverty. Nobody celebrates it. But you can be a poor man today and by your own conviction become a great man, a very rich man, and create your own line of
conviction
achievement.
or opportunity.
For as long as we keep having these definitions of who a hustler is, Mama Ambogo will never be represented in this government.
And then I also want to say something that you see, we are talking about the Rigiji issue. I also want to educate my sister a little bit by telling her that in any competitive democratic process, there is what we call the political shares and the socioeconomic shares.
Okay.
The political shares are reserved for the direct investors.
Okay.
The political shares are the same thing. The way Azimio had planned, Joho would be the minister for lands, Oparanya will be the minister for finance, without even, you see the way
Ruth Ambogo, minister for gender.
I don't know what my sister had. You know, those are political shares.
Minister for gender and public service.
Yes,
And those, my brother, those positions are less than 500. But it's through those political shareholders that the socio-economic shares, which are now provided for in the constitution, are delivered to the people. William Ruto, the president, is the vision bearer. For you to succeed in the delivery of your vision as a vision bearer, you need vision carriers.
Okay.
Those vision carriers must be people who understand what the vision is and they have invested in that vision. So they understand. You don't need to take them to school or try to paint them in different colors.
When was the campaign at school?
So basically what is happening is, I don't know if Raila had become president, if Rigiji would be the minister for agriculture. I don't just understand. Even in China, the ministers, they must be members of the Communist Party. You know, those are the realities that we must have as Kenyans. But now on the other side, I mentioned the socioeconomic rights. Those are what are provided in the constitution. So I will only have a problem if, for example, Ababu Namwamba, the minister for sports, only delivered the sports enterprise and everything in Kenya Kwanza areas or in Busia alone. I'll have a problem with that. But as long as he sits in a national office and he has created devolved opportunities and offices for all Kenyans, as long as Kithiri Kinduke, the professor, the CS for Interior, has not denied any region in this country an office of an assistant chief or a village elder or a chief or a county commissioner, I believe we shouldn't have an issue. Because the problem is in the delivery of the socio-economic rights. We blab about these other things because personally I believe as a farmer, Rigiji's statements will not stop you from planting your tea. In Vihiga, there are people who plant tea there. There are people who plant tobacco. It won't stop you. So let's just trust the process. The office are there and you wait for the service.
But the question is, what are the risks of polarizing?
So far the president...
Exactly. And you know, in as much as my brother here would want to be so philosophical about this whole concept of shareholding,
sharepreneurship.
You know, sharepreneurship and who is supposed to be part of government, who is supposed to go to State House, who is not supposed to be seen there. You know, when some of these statements are made, one asks themselves, does this leader understand the burden of, or the responsibility of leadership, the burden of leadership? You know, leadership begins the moment campaigns stop. That yes, you have been elected to that particular office. And part of what leadership is to bring people together. It is to foster that concept of togetherness, oneness, you know. It is so strange that this is the one government that seems to want to claim ownership by the people who only supported it and by the people who only subscribed to it and whatever ideologies they try to push for, and tries to exclude everybody else, you know. Because if I remember very well, our constitution actually provides for one of the responsibilities of a presidential candidate and their deputy, or rather presidential bearer of the office and the deputy, being that they should be symbols of national unity. So when you begin to make such statements, remember that there are Kenyans who will not take time to try and comprehend and start saying, oh, you know, service delivery will be equal. No, you already create the environment that I should not even expect service delivery if I did not support you as a government. Remember, he's already saying statements such as, oh, you know, if you never supported us, kama wewe si wetu, State House, you'll be locked out of State House. What kind of statements are those? Because you're creating the impression that for as long as I was not on the campaign trail supporting William Ruto, for as long as I was not a member of Kenya Kwanza, for as long as I don't subscribe to the Kenya Kwanza ideology, I don't even deserve to be part of this country. And remember, we are coming from a point where certain Kenyans have for a long period of time felt as if they are not they're not part of the economics of this country. They feel that they've been excluded either from the leadership of this country. Yeah. We are coming from a point where a section of the country at some point, not so many years ago, were feeling that they needed to secede from this country. So one thing that our leaders must understand is the power of their words, not just necessarily the power of their words in terms of what they simply say, but in terms of the effect that has on the psychology of the people. When people begin to talk, what is their reaction to these statements? In as much as one would say, oh yes, service delivery will be equal, but you're setting the culture and the tone for people even holding various positions to start behaving this in the manner that you're behaving. You're setting the tone for cabinet secretaries to start saying that why would inter-cabinet secretary say, Rigiji is saying this is a government of shareholding. So if for instance, Ministry of Health, we shall only focus on these particular areas, So remember that even in appointments right now, it already appears as if the people who are being rewarded are people who come from the areas that supported the president and the deputy president.
Let me ask
areas such as Mount Kenya and the Rift Valley. If you look at the composition of appointments in various boards and various positions that are there. So when we continuously hammer on the people's psychology that this country ni ya wale wali to support, we are creating a division that we will have to deal with, and the consequences could be far-reaching than they can be foreseen right now.
Okay. But let me ask you, Ruth, in the same breath, you remember during campaigns, there's a gentleman called Junaid Mohammed who stood up and said, Baba akichukua serikali itakuwa ya Nyanza. Nyinyi wengine, na he called out one of the guys, I think it was who was called into the podium, na akamwambia wewe utakuwa unakuja kama mgeni. Serikali itakuwa ya Nyanza. Sasa hata Rigiji amepanua kidogo. Hii ilikuwa Nyanza peke yake. What does it say about the misdemeanor and the effects of bad behavior in politics, and also the fact that even you guys as two politicians have a problem? Both sides have said it in a way, but you have an issue with condemning your side and not condemning the other side, or condemning the other side, not condemning your side. Did not say?
No. I will not deny.
Kwanza ungekuwa nje ya serikali wewe.
I will not deny that such statements were made, but one needs to ask themselves, what was the context of such statements? Were those statements made when Raila has become president, or were those statements made to excite the masses? So honestly, right now, the difference between the statements that Rigiji is making and the statements that Junet made back during the campaigns is the timing of this kind of statements. Remember, we have a country where there are people who genuinely believe that their victory was stolen. There are people who genuinely believe that they deserve to be the holders of the presidency, as opposed to the people who are currently holding that particular office right now. So you're still at a time where Kenyans are still trying to settle in, some Kenyans, not all Kenyans, trying to settle in, trying to accept that this is the situation, that, okay, we have to deal with this government probably for the next 5 years. And then you start making such statements. For me, I ask myself that, what would be the consequences of these statements if Kenyans decide that, we are actually fed up with this government, What kind of statement, what would be the consequences of such statements? You must separate what is said on the campaign trail to excite Kenyans and what is said by people who actually hold offices of power with real influence, with resources, and whose words we might take lightly, but might actually end up being reflected in how they make their decisions, in how they render their services to the people. So such statements have to be taken with a pinch of salt, very seriously.
Yes. I would like to ask my sister today. You see, today she's dressed like Mary Magdalene, and she has told us that she's going for prayers. I want to ask one question now.
Bishop, I'm very happy.
I want her to answer me. If those prayers had not been called by the Azimio honchos at the top, would she be going to Jivachi to pray? Which means these people are being incited. How do you allow yourself to be even incited into prayers? Will God even hear those prayers?
What do you mean by incited into
because
prayers?
prayer is voluntary.
Prayers have been called for. We are going the same way. Kenya Kwanza prays, calls for prayers on weekends, and people go for them.
So what my point was this: Kenyans, in their own sobriety and conscience, can never leave their home to go for maandamano. There is something called the power of one. There is always that one man. The point I'm putting across is that this so-called polarization is a bubble that has been created by the political honchos for their own personal benefit. We know there are people who are building value at the moment using the chaos. There are people who are building value so that when they go to the negotiation table, they have built enough value for a sufficient bargain. We look at our history and we can point them out. What am I saying? This issue we've always lived around ethnicization or mobilization and stuff like that. These are consequences of political incitement by political leaders. Because from my own experience, and all of us will agree, there is no single Kenyan in their own sanity who has a problem at the socio-economic level with any other Kenyan from another tribe. At the socio-economic level. These political issues are not creations of the people. These political problems are creations of the political leaders. And that's why when my sister talks about people who believe the elections were stolen, you know, that side, Azimio has two categories of people. We have the street ones and the non-street ones. The non-street ones have one responsibility after elections, before and after elections, to push these people into a hole of absurdity where they must believe that elections have already been stolen even before elections are held. And that's why you realize that's one of their greatest undoing. That statement has two consequences. The first one is that it makes people arrogant, like we've seen in many occasions. I was a candidate down there, and you meet people on election day, they say, hey, I'm going to kupiga kura. Urwasha sema imambo alimaliza. You know, kazi liisha, hakuna haja ya kwenda kupiga kura. What was the consequence of that? 2.4 million from my mother's people who are Nyanza and my father's people in Busia never registered to vote. 2.4 million. 800 and around 60 something never voted never went to vote. Those are around 3 million plus votes.
Okay.
So before we tell people about how elections are stolen, we need to be very careful. We need to ask ourselves, what is our role in that? Because if we are able to, you see, you look at the difference. I'm not here to bastardize anyone or celebrate anyone. But we've seen cases where 98-year-olds are being carried on wheelbarrows in Central to go and vote. But we have very energetic young people here who are telling you, nisimame kwa line ndio nini nisaidie. You know? And that is something to do with the leaders that we have who've created so much negativity in people around this election thing to a point where they never say anything positive. They never encourage their people to go and vote meaningfully to a point where they can get purpose to do that. So, in my opinion, the only unity that Kenyans want is the unity of development and progress. And I want to also ask my sister, the Constitution talks about inclusivity and diversity. There is nowhere in the Constitution where we talk about political inclusivity in government appointments. We talk about regional balance, ethnicity. There is nowhere where the Constitution says that when you are in this party, you must appoint someone from another party for us to be a national outlook. There is nowhere. So we need to be very careful because at the end of the day, this government, and the point where I agree with the Rigiji is because he did not specify the tribe or the region like Junet Mohammed. Because on that side, if Junet was not serious, then does it mean that Oparanya was being lied to that he'll be the minister for finance? So what we need to understand is, Rigiji said, the people who, the vision carriers, understand our vision, so it's easier for us to move. And that's why in that government, there is Eliud Owalo, there is Okombudo, there is Roy. What is his name? Roy who? Yeah, the interior. Yes. Very critical areas. And that's basically, if you look at the appointments, then you should be able to relate with that and say, this was not It's just that the politicians are trying to catapult it into their own perspectives for their own private and personal bidding processes. But the truth is, the statements by the deputy president
You associate with them.
Yeah, I associate with them because when I look at Nyanza, where the president was saying, "I mulinepea 200%," yeah, we have very serious people appointments from there. When you look at Western, when you look at Coast, basically, of course, there will be variances here and there. But as a person, I don't believe we need to detribalize our thinking in order to be able to get development. Because the moment we tribalize our thinking, what she was talking about the other civil servants, the moment you incite, for example, the people against Kikuyus or Kalenjins, then it becomes very difficult for an old woman in my village, Yuko in Mauko, to go and see to go to the deputy county commissioner's office who is a Kikuyu. That is the consequence of that.
Right.
So basically, let's play our political games, but let's try to, when we talk to our people, let's focus. That's why I talked about service delivery and development.
Right.
And that's why we even have devolution. And these people are given an opportunity to elect MPs who can oversight that rigiji so that when he's wrong, they can impeach him.
Okay.
But when you go there and elect the person whose hand has been raised the highest, these are the consequences. And that's why the only oversight that can be done now is through Jivanji.
All right. Okay. All right, moving on quickly. We're happy. It's a praying nation. As a bishop, I'm happy. At least we are useful in this nation. So it's a praying nation. And today, as we are taking their prayers to Jivanji, Nairobi, they are praying for IEBC. They are sanctifying IEBC. What exactly is going on today? Jivanji, Ruth Ambogo.
As you can see, I am dressed ready for prayers.
You're in spirit.
Dressed ready for prayers. This country needs a lot of prayers, especially given the direction that the present government is taking, steering the nation. We need a lot of prayers. And by the time you see, if you see opposition downing their maandamano tools to pray and opt for prayers, my friend, it is very serious. It is very, very serious, yeah? And I think one thing that I found very, I wouldn't call it fascinating, but very divisive during the campaigns was how Kenya Kwanza, I don't know if I should say successfully, but used it as a campaign tool to try and paint we now, current opposition, as though we are not people who are God-fearing, as though we are not people who pray. And
so
yet
you started to fear.
And yet we go to church. A lot of us go to church. We go to church, we pray. On a daily basis, when I wake up, I pray, and I'm an opposition person. So I think there shouldn't be really much to read about in terms of the kind of prayers that we are going to offer today. We pray that the government offers us the support that we need, because clearly prayers are an integral part of ensuring that the country is secured from the hands of people who do not know what to do with it. So we should appreciate that, as a country, we actually get into a point where we appreciate prayers, where we appreciate that there is need to dedicate this country to the Lord. Otherwise, if we don't dedicate this country to the Lord, Bishop, you agree with me, things are not going well.
They are not going well.
Things are not going well,
So you have shouted man for prayers. Look at
relax, Kwanza. Look at where we are at, economically speaking, that we had been promised that once the Bible would be put down, prices of unga would come down. Kenyans are still waiting to see that happen. We are seeing university students currently complaining because apparently an education task force is now increasing the university school fees. We are seeing basically life is literally unbearable in this country. And therefore prayers, the space of prayers must be respected. The space of prayers must be appreciated. And it matters not who leads these particular prayers. But what we will not accept is a government downing its tools instead of working and organizing endless prayers everywhere. Opposition, in fact, should be left the role of praying. If anything, as part of our way of holding the government to check, we should be given the role of praying for the country and let the government focus on doing its job, on delivering on its mandate. Sisi tushikilie hii nchi kwa maombi as we hold the government to check for maandamano. So we really hope that the government actually respects.
So mnataka muachiwe maneno ya maombi.
Sisi tunataka tuachiwe maneno ya maombi. We hope that the government respects our wishes to hold prayers today, and that we will not have any, incidences during this session. And I mean, we need to pray for our country.
Will you mind shisha kidogo? Will you mind shisha kidogo?
Shisha sasa ukileongeza shisha kwa maombi surely. Where are we going, eh?
I think I would like to
but also you have not answered me.
Yes.
So now you've fully resorted to prayers. You
No. We are just having one prayer day. Unlike the government that spends two working days preparing for prayers over the weekend that will be held over the weekend, as we are only having prayers just for today, then we continue with our duty of keeping the government in check through mandamanos, through any other form necessary, and public barazas.
So in a week or 5 days, how many mandamanos, how many prayers?
No. By the way, actually what Kenyans need to understand is that what Azimio is doing right now is what we call public barazas, not necessarily mandamanos, because mandamanos would mean you're on the streets, you're holding leaflets, you're chanting without necessarily making any sense out of whatever it is that you're doing, just holding walks and chanting and saying statements that might not necessarily make any sense, as compared to the public barazas, which are properly organized sessions where the Mwananchi gets to express themselves about the issues that affect this country, and the Mwananchi gets to speak to the government directly and tell them this is what we feel, because remember, we have already been told this is a government of shareholding, so there is no space for you to even go and criticize that government and sit down with the cabinet secretary and sit down with Rigiji and sit down with the president and tell him this is how we feel the country should move forward, or this is what our concerns are. So the public barazas are giving an opportunity to the Mwananchi to be able to speak about their frustrations, to be able to speak about how they wish to see this country governed and led, to be able to hold the government to check. So there must be a differentiation that should be clear in the minds of Kenyans between what a maandamano is and what a public baraza is. What Eric Omondi was doing yesterday is what a maandamano is at Parliament grounds. But a public baraza is a properly organized function where people sit and speak and hold conversations about the way forward for this country.
I think I want to start with the baraza part.
They're borrowing you.
And they are saying it's an opportunity for engagement. When we were growing up, we used to have chiefs barazas where people will engage and raise issues. I've never seen anyone in Kamkunji, or is it the people? You talk about the people. Are the people just Raila, Kalonzo, Junet? Because I've never seen anyone raise their issue.
Do you really watch these barazas? That's
you see,
the point I would want to ask.
A baraza, in my opinion, is not a place where someone goes to be lectured by the powers from above.
No, it's where people go express themselves, and that is what has been happening.
How will you express yourself when you're standing there in the
dust? That is what has been happening all along. Common Mwananchi are actually given an opportunity to express themselves. I think, my brother, you have not been keeping up with what has been happening at these public barazas. By the way, and the difference between that and what used to happen previously, especially with Azimio rallies, is that you'd find at Azimio rallies, you'd find, politicians, top politicians, regional leaders being given the opportunity to speak. But if you currently look at the model of the barazas right now, common, ordinary Mwananchi are given the opportunity to speak, and then, of course, with a mix of leaders, because the leaders also need to speak to provide direction to the people. Otherwise, it would not be a baraza, because a baraza is where you have the people speak, give their opinion, you have the leaders also speak, provide direction.
Okay, so I think we leave that aside, and I think I have some simple advice for my sister. My sister, I think you are in one of your best moods today. I beseech upon you in the holy name of God, before the man of God, yes. Please untag yourself from that opposition mentality. Because even constitutionally, we don't have opposition in Kenya. We have the minority. Please become the minority that can then ideologically check the government. And that's why you're complaining about Rigiji, because I mentioned something. Majority of the MPs in the opposition were elected because their hand was the highest raised. So when instead of, these are people who went to parliament.
As if the same never happened.
These are people who went to parliament, and because they do not have the independent ability to do their job, they cannot legislate, they cannot oversight. So the only thing they can do, because when they went there, they got there because of the people. They went there because of the hand that raised them. So when they get to parliament, it becomes a problem for them to work. And that's why you realize, and I also want to remind my sister, all of us cannot meet the deputy president or the president. And that's why these conversations are supposed to be held in a very safe place called parliament, where nobody will throw stones at you, nobody will throw shish at you, and you will be safe. And all Kenyans will see you on KBC contributing an alternative and superior view.
But Ruth wants to pray. She cannot pray in parliament.
Now, for prayers, it's okay. You can pray. But also, as you pray, please pray for your MPs so that they can get the wisdom to generate alternative and superior ideas in parliament. So that we are talking about the raising taxes. I want to see a minority that comes up with an alternative bill that ensures that we do not crash the economy. We save the people from the high cost of living while still growing our economy. That is possible when you have minds that know their job.
Okay.
But when you have minds that are going today to forego a parliamentary session when serious issues are being discussed, they will come back tomorrow when a bill has been passed and they will go for maandamano and say that it's a bad bill. But when they were supposed to be doing that, what they were paid for, they were out there. So it's very important to also note that the government of Kenya is not William Ruto, Rigathi Gachagua, and the CSS or the PSS. The government of Kenya, one, ni mimi na wewe. Kwa sababu tulichagua hiyo serikali. Upende, usipende. You participated.
I like the fact that you are admitting that the government is mimi na wewe.
Yes.
Meaning we should have an opportunity to express ourselves on how this country is being led. And we all cannot fit into parliament, and that is why the constitution provides for an opportunity for you to hold barazas. It provides for an opportunity for you to go for maandamanos. It provides for an opportunity for you to express yourself in whichever way you deem fit. And there's a statement that you have made that makes me really wonder whether you're really a Kenyan citizen when you say that the opposition is unable to do its job of keeping the government in check because most of the leaders in the opposition are people whose hands were the highest held, and therefore they do not know whatever it is they're supposed to be doing in parliament, when clearly the history and records of this country show that some of the best legislators this country has ever had have actually been legislators from the opposition zones of this country. Look at the likes of Orengo when he was a member of parliament. Look at the likes of Millie Odhiambo. Look at the likes of, I mean, some of the best legislators we have had in this country, people who actually go to parliament to legislate as opposed to doing business, are actually people from opposition zones. You just have to look at the...
Were they holding prayers that time? Were they holding prayers that time?
What is it usually called? I think it's Mzalendo Watch or something like that. The one that usually ranks members of parliament based on their contribution to parliament and parliamentary discussions and debates in parliament. Most of the time, the people who rank the highest on that list and people who end up ranking the lowest in terms of never having contributed at all are usually people who rank the highest are usually people from opposition zones, and people who rarely speak in parliament are people who come especially from these Kenya Kwanza regions, people who rarely speak in parliament. So we cannot sit here and lie to Kenyans that opposition is not doing its job. We cannot sit here and make that lie.
Can you now please connect for me between those non-performing MPs and more development going to their areas and the performing ones with no development? That's a story for another day. The point I was finalizing on is that the government is not Ruto, Rigiji, or the cabinet. The government is me and you. Then the government is the people we elected. The government is the people the government has devolved to the grassroots. Okay. Personally, I would have a problem if I went to the assistant chief's office and I'm told that the assistant chief's office is not open today because the assistant chief is organizing for prayers for the government in the next 2 days. But for me, as long as devolved government offices are working, devolved government resources are serving the people, as long as we have government offices everywhere that are open, even today, even when the president is having prayers at Nyayo, there is someone in the office of the president that if you have an issue that is supposed to be addressed, it will be addressed. So let's not babble some of these words as if the government shuts down. Because even at that time, when people are having prayers, like today they'll be having theirs, they say they are an alternative government.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that schools in the opposition zones will be shut and everybody will be here for prayers. It doesn't. It's the same thing. It's the same thing when the government is having those prayers. Even on Sunday when people go to church, there are others who are working. So it doesn't mean that when people are having prayers, now everything has to stop.
Okay.
Mimi, I want to beseech upon my sisters again before the man of God,
yes,
that let's be wise in let's educate our people righteously and in a correct manner. Let's tell our people, not all of us can line at State House. Not all of us can even line at the MP's office.
Okay.
There are many government offices. Every government department has an office. At the lowest level, let's say at the sub-county level, at least you'll find an office that is accessible to everyone. Let's utilize that as enshrined in the Constitution.
All right, let's speak also, and moving on very quickly from the siasa of the day and Maombi. Let's move on to IBC. The constitution of IBC commissioners is due. The positions have been advertised all day from chairman, and the commissioners are supposed to serve at IBC. Now, this is a statement at the National Assembly as Azimio refutes or rejects the selection panel, the IBC. Are we about to see another repeat of a stalemate that's going to build up into the general elections of 2027? What are your thoughts on the constitution of IBC, Ruth Ambogo?
Well, one thing that I know is that Azimio's biggest concern is on the constitution of the panel that will select whoever becomes the commissioners and the chairperson of the IBC. And that is a concern that is quite legitimate in the sense that if you have a panel that is purely loyal to the president, purely loyal to the powers that be, you definitely know what you're going to expect out. Rather, you definitely know the outcome that shall be of the process of interviews of these candidates who shall present themselves as candidates for the positions that are available. And that is a concern that is quite legitimate. And indeed, that is the reason why Azimio is saying that we are not going to participate in this particular process unless the panel itself is reconstituted. You have, I think it's 2 members from the Parliamentary Service Commission. You have 1 member from the Public Service Commission, and I think some interreligious representation is also there. But that representation by the Parliamentary Service Commission and the Public Service Commission gives an upper hand to the powers that be, and that is what Azimio is concerned about. So it is a legitimate concern, and of course, in as much as we would like to say and would like to overemphasize on the independence of the commission that shall be in place to be able to lead us to the upcoming elections and the 2027 elections, in as much as we want to reiterate that IBC is an independent commission, we know how this country works, People pledge allegiance and loyalty to the appointing authority. And if it's not just the appointing authority, but whoever oils their pockets the highest, we know what happens in this country. We cannot lie to ourselves that, that whoever shall be appointed at the IBC shall be independent, shall hold themselves out as the constitution expects them to be. They shall not be under the influence of anybody else. So once the constitution of the panel that selects these people has already been compromised, then the outcome is as good as known. The outcome is known that whoever shall be appointed shall be loyal to the president, and there's nothing that you can do about it. So that is the concern that Azimio has.
All right.
Yeah.
So are you also then suggesting that because you're contesting an election that just passed, and the people, the commission that was there was answerable to the power that was the handshake and the president Uhuru Kenyatta?
Remember, I also said.
Are you suggesting that also?
I also said that the loyalty of the IBC commission is also dependent on who oils their pockets the most. And we know what happened during the past elections.
Okay.
I mean, those who don't know, but those who know, know.
Yes. If you know, you know.
People were in people's pockets.
Okay. So another thing. Right. So Azimio has refused to forward their choice of members of the panel. So what happens now? Because I've said they're not going to forward the names.
I mean, unless the panel is reconstituted.
But how,
there will be a stalemate.
Who are we going to reconstitute with? Because they are saying they are not going to forward the names. At least they say, give us Ruth, Ambogo and Odweo, then we're going to balance out. So what happens if they finally, today, they don't manage to submit their names? What is the stalemate that we are looking at? Are we building up another contest in 2027 on the basis of IBC?
It's not even 2027. I mean, the moment that commission is constituted, you will start seeing serious, serious contestations about who is on that particular list. So that is what we are likely to see a stalemate for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Constitution of IBC. And I mean, what should be the ideal situation?
The ideal situation should be as provided for by the Constitution. Mm-hmm. If what the president is doing is as per the law, then the rest become opinions that should not define the decisions that run our country. Mm-hmm. That's my point of divergence. Mm-hmm. Because you cannot make everyone sleep hungry in this house just because you are the only you insist that you buy food that you can only eat. Mm-hmm. There are people who don't use peri-peri in their meat. Now, because you are the one who is cooking, you put peri-peri and then everyone else cannot eat. You are the only one who eats, which is a very sorry state. Mm-hmm. And that's why I go back to that point where I told my sister, she's mentioned, and I know, I also know this is a fact. Mm-hmm. Some of the best legislators, of course, in this country have always come from the Luo Nyanza region, mm-hmm, in terms of parliamentary contribution and legislative noise. But I want to ask myself, when you look at the composition of parliament today, Kenya Kwanza has, is it 37 or 36 senators? Mm-hmm. In total, and Azimio la Umoja has 30. Mm-hmm. In parliament, Kenya Kwanza has 179, Azimio has 158, and we have 12 independents. Are you telling me that 158 people plus 30, that is 188 people, cannot generate an idea, a legislative idea, that can then guide this process instead of boycotting or putting it in prayers? Mm-hmm. Are you telling me that that's not possible? That 188 people cannot sit down and decide, instead of the ping pongs that we are pulling here and there, this is a law for posterity that is going to guide this process going forward. Mm-hmm. That is what, the moment you devour yourself of the opposition mentality, mm-hmm, and then you sink in the minority river that has a lot of prosperity, then you open your mind to the possibility of enriching that what you deem your enemy, mm-hmm, is providing. Okay. Because what we want as a person, yes, we may talk about my allegiances, but what I know, when this country goes down, my mother in the village will also suffer. Mm-hmm. I am in Nairobi here. I might be the first to suffer. When roads are blocked and it's in chaos, I'll not be able to travel to Butula to do my things. Mm-hmm. So I am as interested in what the government is doing, okay, as any other person. And that's why I call upon Kenyans. Before you shout at the president, you shout at the minister. Mm-hmm. You elected someone in the name of an MP. What are they doing? That person is supposed to represent you, not in funerals, mm-hmm, and in rallies. Mimi niko hapa kwa niaba ya watu ya Butula. No, we want to hear that in parliament. Na utuambie, on behalf of the people of Butula, kuna hii mswada nimekutana na watu wa Butula kwa baraza, na wamekaa wakaniambia appointment ya IEBC inafaa ikuwe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. As Odweo, it does not matter whether you are in Kenya Kwanza or in ODM or in Azimio. I will be the first to support you. As my MP, if you call a baraza and we talk about what can help us, because there's some sort of, there is what I call progressive selfishness. And that's why you find people lobbying more than others. Because you have, lazima ujitokeze, ndio uchaguliwe, ndio uongozi. Wajua? Okay. Sasa ndugu, we cannot say that hiyo kitu ni mbaya. Mimi, I don't live in that world where we boycott, we refuse because it's bad, without providing an alternative. All right. The most important thing for me is bring a superior idea if you believe the idea that is there is wrong. All right. But boycotting something and refusing to participate, mm-hmm, means you are holding people hostage until your personal demands are met. And we always know where such things end. Because the government, as provided by the law, might proceed because we need an IEBC. And then now the the drums of war will start being beaten.
Okay.
An excuse for Kimeibiwo will already have been created, and we'll have 4 years where people will be charged and incited. And that's how some people don't even end up going to vote in those areas. Because for 4 years, you've already been told our elections will be stolen.
Okay.
There was an opportunity for you to do something legislatively and administratively. You never did it.
Okay, all right. Let's look at the newspaper headlines very quickly. Moving on, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to the top of the hour, 3 minutes to 9 a.m. Looking in at the newspaper headlines, Business Daily, top security organ approved purchase of Telcom for shillings 125 billion. Okay. Organ purchase of Telco for 625. Ruta Kashagwa officers bust annual budget in 7 months. Where? Hiya.
Telling you.
Okay. Serikali imefuliza budget ya mwaka mzima in 7 months. What will tell us about that? Okay, and also on the newspapers today, on the Business Daily, Kenya's top security organ approved the state acquisition of Telecom Kenya for shillings 125.6, that is US dollars, from a UK-based private equity in a deal that has kicked up a storm in Parliament. Confidential treasury documents seen by the Business Daily indicate that the National Security Council, NSC, approved the purchase of the 60% stake from the Helios partners on grounds of risk of national security. Okay. In the deal, Kenya reimbursed Helios $51 million, that is 6.37 billion, through a 3-year government bond for shareholder loans. The private equity fund provided Telecom Kenya to keep the loss-making entity afloat. Wow. Okay. If you know how things work, I don't know which business national security has in purchase of assets or parastatals. Huduma Namba drives have a setback with 84% budget cut. President William Ruto's government has signaled the end of the National Integrated Identity Management System, names well known as Huduma Namba, with a deep budget cut of 574 million. Where Kenya's Global Trading Cabinet Secretary and foreign trade deals, when Trade Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria is not rubber-rousing in matters outside his scope, he's sure to be global trotting. Mr. Kuria has emerged as the most traveled minister in the administration of President William Ruto, having been out of Kenya at least 19 occasions in the first 100 days since he took office. Okay. So technically been away for half of the period since government came into office. Tax-free essential goods imports to fight inflation. Kenya will import large quantities of rice, cooking oil, sugar, wheat, and beans duty-free via the Kenya National Trade Corporation, KNTC, as part of the efforts to tame the rising cost of essential commodities in Kenya. All right. That's on the Business Daily. Looking in at People Daily, Raila critics in CS shortlist. Who will it be? Ruto likely to get free hand in picking candidates who will tame his rival. He has also a large pool of experts, allies to choose from as he seeks to consolidate government. That's on page 28 of the People Daily. Azimio rally set for City Center today. Si I don't true amesema ni maombi na hata kuna Biblia hapa. Opposition push for a reduction in the cost of living and reforming IBC to be held in Jevanji Gardens in the CBD, Nairobi. Okay. Taifa Leo, Raila achanganya magavana. Magavana Azimio wako njia panda iwapo unge Rais Ruto au la. Kenya shujaa yatua Amerika. Pia pale bunge linachunguza matumizi ya mabilioni ya fedha mwisho wa utawala wa Uhuru. Uhuru alifagia pesa akistaafu. Hiyo ni swali imeulizwa na Taifa Leo. Uhuru alifagia pesa akistaafu. Madai ya ubadhirifu. Wabunge wameanzisha kuchunguza madai kwamba serikali ya Rais mstaafu Uhuru Kenyatta ilitumia zaidi ya shilingi bilioni 55 bila idhini ya bunge miezi miwili kabla ya kiongozi huyo kuondoka mamlakani mnamo Septemba 13 mwezi wa 2012. Haya, mabaria kubeba msalaba wa mlanguzi. Washukia ambao ni raia wa kigeni walikataa kutaja mlanguzi aliyekuwa anasafirisha dawa za kulevya nje ya nchi. Tetemeko jipya laua watu 3 Uturuki. Kaunti yasema ni mali kwa mali. Serikali ya kaunti ya Lamu kwa hapa waliopoteza hadhi mahali pengine badala ya pesa walivyotarajia. Sema shamba unapoteza shamba unapewa shamba. Hakuna kupewa pesa uende kule. Haya. The Standard revealed the secrets of Dusi terror raid. Agony of their teachers rejected a new schools. Outbreak that awaits CIS hopefuls. Machos. Sabina Chege, why Jubilee is in problems? Sabina Chege kwanza amesema nyinyi mlitesa yeye sana kama Azimio. Ilikuwa kuwa deputy governor Nairobi. The Manhattan Sabina Chege, every former presidential Uru's abandonment of duty, but as Azimio coalition council chair and Jubilee leader is driving a party into political irrelevance. Wow, okay. Star, Uru faction calls NDC to sack rebels. Kioni calls on top party organs to fight back, plan to counter Jubilee takeover by Ruto. Allied team. Hapo mama wa Kitenge pia wako hapo. Women MPs to wear locally designed clothes to boost SMEs. From streets of Nakuru to Medic, who mentors other street boys. SRC to abolish non-practice allowance for medics and judges. Well, okay. Ruto have balancing act in CIS jobs. That is it on the newspapers. Anything you wish to comment on? Kuna mkitu nataka kusema kwa gazeti?
Bitok.
Yes.
The amounts of money that this government has blown in the past 7 months.
Yeah.
And yet they claim the government is broke. Is disheartening. Mm-hmm. It is disheartening for that Kenyan who is at a region or coming from a place where there is completely, no food, drought, people sleeping hungry, and yet we are told there is no money at all. And in fact, I remember this is not even the first report of how much State House has spent so far, and the various offices of the Deputy President and other offices have spent so far. I remember the first report that came out just a few, short of 100 days. It was literally less than 100 days before, after they had taken over power. And the amount of money that had been spent was actually more than the amount of money that Rigathi Gachagua told us they found left in the coffers when they got to office. So you ask yourself, where did the money come from that they spent, within that short period of time? And it's not just these offices, but look at how our cabinet secretaries are also spending money. I'm baffled that one of the cabinet secretaries has been out of the country probably more times than he has been within the country. And it's this kind of expenditure that makes Kenyans ask ourselves, are our priorities really right or not, And not only is it the amount of money that has been spent so far, but the proposals to increase the budgetary allocation for State House from 8 billion to 13 billion, but an increment of over 5 billion shillings, and yet we stand so confidently telling Kenyans at every weekend prayer meeting that we have no money whatsoever, and we will pray for your problems. When it comes to your problems, we are very much ready to pray for you, for God to intervene. But when it comes to the budgetary allocations for our functions and our offices, we are willing to increase the amounts of money to as ridiculous amounts of money as possible. And one asks themselves, where do these monies go to? The only explanation for that is money is spent to woo people. Money is spent to woo people to support the government. Money is spent to get as many opposition MPs as possible to come and support the current government. And, for me, this is just a question of priorities. It is a question of a government that does not care about the people's concerns, but is concerned about consumerism. It is a government that is not willing to set their priorities right, given the current situation. It is a government that has no expertise whatsoever in understanding that when a country is going through hunger, when people are dying of hunger, when people are complaining of the high cost of living, what should you forgo? If anything, they're actually doing the exact opposite of what the previous regime had done, where the president back then actually cut on so much expenditure when it came to State House expenditure to the deputy president's office. There was a lot of cuts that were done just before the president left office, and yet you will hear them at every prayer meeting that they hold, which, by the way, we are yet to quantify how much money goes to those prayer meetings, all those weekend prayer meetings, how much money is spent at those meetings. We are yet to quantify that amount. They will talk of how the former government screwed up our economy, and so we don't have money, yet they have money to spend for themselves. So for me, as a Kenyan, my concern is, what is the priority? What are the priorities that this government holds to heart? Do we care about Kenyans? Do we care about the welfare of those who are suffering and dying of hunger? And it is even more laughable when we have ministers and cabinet secretaries suggesting that we can actually donate food to other countries, and yet our own people are dying of hunger. So for me, these are questions that just make me ask myself, does this government really know what they ought to be doing? Do they know how to lead the country? Do they know what priorities they need to put in place when it comes to deciding what agenda comes first?
My sister mentioned something to do with wooing opposition MPs. And I think in our political conversation, we were talking about what she termed as limitation by the Kenya Kwanza government for what we will call in quotes outsiders. But the other day we saw someone, Jalango, being riffraffed for having gone to State House on development conversations.
What development?
So let's not eat when it suits us and shoot when it doesn't. I think we need to look at it from that progressive perspective. I think on the issue of the government expenditure, you asked about the issue of the youth and the youth not applying for jobs, and we were all in agreement that unless PSC gives us the 5,000 and then we are able to see that the young people did not apply, then we cannot just blanketly condemn the youth when we know what the system has done for them and all that stuff, despite their efforts. So on the same thing, until the Auditor General comes out and tells us that these expenditures were in vain and were not in the interest of the Kenyan people, and they did not bear in fruit, I think we need to hold our horse. And the government must spend for it to serve its people. Expenditure is not limited to local. Expenditure can be anywhere in the world because we live in a global space where the other day we were talking, I saw the headlines about JP Morgan coming to open a regional branch in Kenya. Those are opportunities in Kenya. So when we say that these people are just perambulating with zero impact, positive impact, then I think we need to be reserved when making such comments. Because what I know is that from my little understanding of how government operates, most of these are opportunities, partnerships are created when people sit on the table. Okay. Those tables cannot just be local. It's the same thing, and that's why I still insist, let's not focus, let's not look at government as being Ruto or the CSS. Because we have governors who are traveling all over the world and they are spending county money, and counties are even worse off than the national government. We are heading into the planting season. You realize that a governor of Trans Nzoia of Busia is perambulating all over the world. Why are we not asking that governor to use that money to give fertilizers and subsidies to farmers? So I'm not justifying anything, but what I want to beseech Kenyans is, these people are in office, and as of this moment, I take the presumptive opinion that they are doing their job and they are doing what's required as per the Constitution. Okay. So even as we comment, for me, I believe it's important for us to give them the benefit of doubt if we can't trust them, because trust is overrated and trust does not exist in leadership. Right. And then I also, my final comment would be, I would like to tackle my sister by asking her why Uhuru had to downgrade the budgets a few days before leaving office and not before.
Okay. All right. Bunga la Mwananchi liko wazi, nambari ni 0731 027 or 731 027 Bunga la Mwananchi liko wazi 0731 027 or 731 027 Bunga la Mwananchi liko wazi, nambari ni 0731 027 731 027 Bunga liko wazi 731 027 Don Sabwa, oh no, I expected the man to talk like a man, but he's talking like a small boy. Well, okay, the lady, she's talking like a Kenyan. It's interesting language. But Masataita, some other plain truths are unpalatable. Rigiji must be advised. So, Don Sabwa, the MP has nothing. If they had, they could be visiting. They could not be visiting State House, and Ruta could not be carrying that power interest with the presidency. I don't know. Or that power interest with the presidency. We had 9 years of Ruta campaign. That is Don Sabwa speaking. Okay. But Masaki probably revisited the Salim loan, Raila's advisor said about Ruta in 2017. Impressive. He said Ruta is one of the most versatile, smart, brilliant, swift and genius politician in Africa. As such, Raila knows the power of Ruta. That is why he wouldn't allow him to establish himself and has gone full throttle to scuttle his government barely 6 months in office. Malika Inek tuned in, Center. Clive Wanzala, it's a shame for former governors to be on the list of the nominees. Why is Gidero on that list? Kiprotich Koromicha, good to see you, my brother. Good morning, listening from Nakuru CBD. Thank you so much, bro. But Masai Titus Kiprop, some of the truths are unpalatable. Rigiji must be advised. So, Rigiji is confirming to naysayers that he was not the best sober choice for the post. Professor Kindiki was UDA was very strategic in campaigns to stop fallout of the losers by promising them appointments. Okay. Steve Touch Mugai, Touch Innocent Isaac Mutai, let the new breed be brought. These old guys were end. It should be reserved for youth as a way of mentoring them. That's on the CSS. Randy J, yes, Asante Sana, Kabon Sara. Ruth, you are cheating us, Bona. Give us facts. Okay. Dixon Mwangi to this, tell this girl, give facts to Touch Mugai for. Good to see you from Kandara, from Kisumu, Kandara. Steve Taimuga, many are lost in the last concluded elections and will be disappointed since the president cannot reward all of them at once. Okay, interesting times. Don't Jimmy, positions within the political cycles are very emotive, Gerald. Rewards for loyalty must be factored. We cannot overlook it. But I agree with what Ruth, the youth must be prioritized in a proper legislative manner. All the same, we should also realize that in a nation of 50 million Kenyans, we cannot all get appointed despite our skills, abilities, know-how. So we should not get salty and bitter if we miss up the appointment. There are so many other opportunities abound. Okay. Jane Mumbi. Some people argue just to argue. I don't know who that person is. Jane. Dixon Mangi, I thought we should be here on facts. Then Morgan D. Dev. Seeing senior former government officials scrambling for small positions like CS, which should be left for youth, is heartbreaking. During campaigns, President promised a lot to the youth and hustlers. But after assuming office, he forgot everything. We were brainwashed 100%. Okay. Sharon Chani, bottom up, Mama Ambogo is out. All right. Abodi mengi, asante machache. All right. Looking in also, there's a supplemental budget that is coming in and you are seeing a lot of budget cuts. And the question is, are budget cuts the way out of the economic quagmire that we are in? What do you guys think about the supplementary budget? Ruth?
I haven't had a chance to look at the supplementary budget. Mm-hmm. So, but for me, I mean, I guess what has come out clearly this morning that has seemed to take up the headlines is the increase of the budgetary allocation to the president and the deputy president's office. So, I mean, once I get the chance to properly look at the proposed budgetary cuts, then I can be able to comment about them. But one thing that the opinion that I have always held is that there needs to be regard needs to be placed for the importance of a department before thinking about cutting budgetary allocations to the same departments. For instance, judiciary, healthcare, education. There are certain aspects of the society or certain departments of government that if budgetary cuts are subjected, or rather if they're subjected to budgetary cuts, then the service delivery to Mwananchi will be affected, So we must ask ourselves which are the most critical aspects of society, which are the most critical departments of government that serve the Mwananchi directly, that if budget cuts are subjected to them, then Mwananchi will suffer. So for me, that has always been my opinion about budgetary cuts, budgetary increments, and the whole budgeting process in the country. Like, you must ask yourself, what are the functions of this particular department that if we increase the allocation to the same, we will be able to satisfy the interest of the Mwananchi, or if we cut the allocations to these particular departments, then Mwananchi will suffer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Now, since you've not looked at the document, what did you say? Some of the areas that you think would be very key to invest in the terms of budget. What are some of the areas that you would love to see the government prioritize in terms of budgeting?
I think for me, it's mostly agriculture, first of all, because we must deal with the immediate problem, which is can Kenyans be able to afford to put food to the table? That we must look at agriculture needs to be prioritized in terms of looking at the welfare of farmers, in terms of even trying to provide incentives for more and more people to engage in agriculture, especially the younger population. That can we incentivize agriculture to an extent where young people can actually find it as something that they would want to engage in? Because I mean, a country that cannot grow its own food is a country that is doomed in case of droughts and any other severe weather patterns that would, that would prevail, would affect that particular country. Second, definitely education, because we know that a great population of this country is basically living below the poverty line and therefore unable to afford education. So if anything, education as much as possible needs to be subsidized so that as many people as possible can get an opportunity to compete. Healthcare is quite important. We saw what happened when COVID-19 affected us, that, were we ready for it? We are hearing complaints about so many doctors who are unemployed, and yet the masses that require healthcare services are actually, the population of people who require healthcare services is a lot, and yet we still hear stories of doctors who are unemployed or underpaid. Such needs to be rectified. Allocation to drugs, various drugs that are required. So for me, it's mostly around those. Those three areas for me stand out the most, because if not taken care of, then mwananchi is likely to suffer. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Have you been able to look at the supplementary budget at all?
Not conclusively. So I'll not... Actually, my comment will be very general. And I wouldn't call it budget cuts. I will call it public finance standardization and prioritization. Because more often than not, you'll realize that something is being chopped from here to be used here. And the part where I agree with my sister is that we need to get our priorities right. Now, when we talk about priorities, it shouldn't be about perspectivication. It should be something that is focused on the people, so that we invest. We know where we are as a country. So we need to be very careful in our investments. We need to be very careful in our expenditures, so that we need to put our coins where we have not just, we can't invest everything in long-term projects, because you cannot die while saving for tomorrow. You must have something for today in order for you to move to the next day. So I think that's where I would like you've asked, some of the priority areas. For me, the youth have always been seen as a burden to the government. The problem of the youth, that is the prefix for the youth. I would like to see as a society where the young people are an opportunity to the government. I think we are having a conversation here, and I think there are a lot of ideas that people can pick. There's a lot of energy in the young people. So we need to prioritize this sector we are calling the young people, so that we don't solve the problems of the youth. We optimize the opportunities in the young people. To optimize that, I believe the government needs to invest a lot. 1, in technology, and 2, agriculture. Agriculture solves 3 problems. Agriculture, people always talk about food security. We don't need food security. We are not food secure if we are importing everything from Uganda. What if Uganda blocks the border? We will die. We need food sovereignty. And food sovereignty only comes when we are producing, not just for ourselves. But first, we must be able to feed ourselves so that we now export or sell the difference. So once we invest in agriculture, we'll have solved the food sovereignty issue. That's 1. 2, we've created employment. And then 3, then the third thing we need to invest in is value addition. We will have achieved our manufacturing goals because we have ready local raw materials. The moment we have ready local raw materials, we don't have to import. That works in our favor in terms of foreign exchange, in terms of balance of trade. Those are some of the simplest ways of solving our economic quagmires. Because manufacturing also has a myriad of opportunities where you have employment. Because the easiest way to solve the issue of unemployment is through manufacturing and commercialization of talent. So we also need to invest in talent and entrepreneurship and small enterprises, because that is the core of our economy. Majority of 75% of our economy is informal. So we need to stop calling it informal. We need to formalize this, what we have demeaned as informal, so that we don't call them as juakali the way we've been calling them, so that we don't have people scared of going to Kamukunji because the juakali people are rowdy, they are not polished and stuff like that. We need to create a platform, and that platform requires opportunities for training, opportunities for mentorship, opportunities for financing, so that when we talk about, for example, the main agenda of Kenya Kwanza was bottom up.
Yes.
In my opinion,
is it still?
In my opinion, we need to invest in bottom up industrialization. We put in place policies, both capacity building and financial, that can ensure that I, as Odweyo Kennedy, does not have to deliver my milk to a monopoly that will then sell to me the chemical at the price they choose. I, as Odweyo Kennedy, can come together with Bishop and my sister here, and then we put up our own entity, and we are regulated enough to be able to produce by ourselves, and then we grow our entity. Because if, one, we are able to produce for ourselves, then you look at a country like Russia today. People thought that when the war started and there were all these sanctions, Russians would start dying of hunger. What saved them and what saves such countries is the ability to self-sufficiency. Once you're self-sufficient, that's where the respect comes in. That's where you have the muscle to even bargain. So I beseech the government, let's invest in technology. We need to homogenize it. Let's normalize technology so that we don't look at people who are using smartphones as being special. As people, in the villages where when people see you doing like a techpreneurship, you are a YouTuber, they think you must be an IT person. So we need to put in place measures, and this we can leverage on the already existing government spaces and infrastructure. The government has infrastructure everywhere. So if we can be able to expand and use those opportunities, I think we'll be able to solve all these problems at once. And I think one thing I will never allow myself to stop without insisting is talent, sports and art. We need to invest meaningfully and ensure that our sports people and all the players, both in sports medicine and other fields, are able to earn and live a living from their trade.
5 minutes, should be 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 6 minutes to 9:30, 6 minutes to on 9:30, 6 minutes to 9:30. This is the Tackle the Siasa Wednesday edition of the 22nd of February 2023. We are with Ruth Ambogo and Kennedy Odweyo. Bunga la Mwenyechi, maybe you can only take one or two phones. Phone calls. Bunga la Mwenyechi 731-027-727 or 731-027-727. Don't take one or two calls at the max, because we have only 5 minutes to the top of the hour. Arizon Mutai Senior, good to see you. Good morning. Asante sana. CC Kennedy, you are doing a great job. Okay. And is it on YouTube? Let me see who else is there. Don Sabo amesema tulikuwa na kampeni ya miaka 9. Okay. Interesting times. Melly K. Nick is tuned in. Okay. Let's also look at, I think there's something else that I had left out. Can you want me to declare matrimony upon the two of you as a bishop? Mnazanganyana nini? Ama nataka kupelekwa maombi ya town.
Maoni ya wananchi.
Haya, nataka kusikia maoni ya wananchi. Wananchi ndio hiyo hapo. I don't know what's wrong. What looks like, seems like we also have a problem with our call, but there's something else here I'm supposed to pick up on, and it's about something here I'm supposed to pick up on. Okay, we've spoken about IEBC, spoken about supplementary budget. What else was left here? There was something on something you're not picked on. I'm trying to find out. There's something that I think we had left. Okay. I think it was church politics that we picked on that. Political parties, rebels. Okay, rebels of political parties. But anyway, let's get to hear this person has to say. Hello? Good morning. Bungala Mwanyichi, good morning.
Morning, this is Mso.
Yes, Mso.
How are you today?
Fine. How are you?
I want to say hi to Ruth. Sweetheart, how are you? Hi, Mommy. We need to irrigate our throats very soon.
Kabisa.
Yaani vitu mnasema mbele ya
Baada ya
bishop.
maombi.
We will pray and to convert water into wine like it was done at Cana. And today I had to tune in because I miss you so much and I know you are fire being mortal.
Thank you so much, my sister. We should be invited for a show together.
Totally. And I like the way you've taken those gentlemen on a rat race. I think the future is totally female.
The future is female for sure. The present is female.
Yes, I also want to say hi to the other panelists. I mean, it was a hot debate, but let's go straight to the point. I want to look at the issue of Hello, are we still on?
Yes, we are on.
Now, this issue, there's so much to talk about, but I want to go directly to the fact that there are some non-government MPs. Okay, I don't want to call them non-government MPs because once a member of parliament is elected to serve their people, they will serve regardless of which government is in place.
Yes.
But now that some Azimio MPs are going to the government side and stories like that, I think this is not something that is new. It has been happening since time immemorial. Since even the days of Sanu and Kadu, and that will continue to happen. Lobbying happens all the time because a government that wants to push its agenda has got to have the numbers. So yes, I know sometimes it rubs off negatively, or maybe it looks like the government wants to tame the opposition or stuff like that. But really, this is not something we can avoid. It has been happening since time immemorial. Actually, the time it happened very blatantly, it was during the Uhuru era, the previous regime. That's when now it happened, the whole opposition, not just a bit of it. The whole, we really had no opposition. We had to concoct plan for functions to continue happening. So I know that is something that is a bone of contention. That is something that is like really everywhere out there, but it has got to happen. It is going to happen. Even if Raila would have been in power, he would have sought to increase his numbers. It does not matter who is in power. That one is going to happen. It happens even in foreign countries. But there's something Ruth talked about, the youth and these employment opportunities. Okay, I've seen that list of CASs. Being a Ruto sycophant, let me emphasize on that. I am a Ruto sycophant. Being a Ruto sycophant, I always say, mi najua huyo mzee atafanya kazi. And if that's the list that his people, the people he has given that mandate, if that's what they came up with, I know there are some names there that give me a headache, totally. Hey, Jaman. And also, there are some names that I feel they should even be embarrassed that they applied, they themselves. The youth should be given priority. In fact, that positions zingine zinafaa kuambiwa, nobody over 35, even me as a shosh of 42, I should not even dare approach that direction. Like nobody over 35 should come anywhere near. If we are to have such legislation, and that's why I'm saying that to complain up a Ruth.
Yes.
Hiyo ni kitu wanafaa kuput kwa floor ya house, because that's where laws are made. That there are some positions hizi zenye zina creatiwa outside the constitution. Ziki creatiwa, yes, na zipitishwa na bunge. Zipewe age brackets. Yes, it will look like we are doing ageism. Ageism is a thing in developed countries that will look like we are hating on old people. But no. There has to come a time where leadership of the youth is being given priority. Otherwise, tutangojea mpaka the way kitambo people used to be told, you wait until your parents die for you to uanze kulima kweli. So unaishi your parents walilelewa na ndume na nguashe, so they live until they are 80. You die before them. So that's what we are looking for. Because we are dying before these leaders. Unakumbuka Uncle Mudi akiappointiwa what was he appointed to? The guy is like 100 years. Mtu anaona bado anapewa positions na serikali ya Uhuru. So really, as we are complaining about our youth, there needs something to be done legislatively, that some positions, and these are things that we can be able to push to parliament. And if we don't do it in this tenure between now and 2032, hiyo kitu itapotelea pote, because everybody wants to continue with the norm, because we are seeing the ones the previous regimes wali benefit. Now, instead of us saying that current government is doing ABCD, why can't we have our allies who are in parliament start pushing legislations? And if you look at the turnover of parliament nowadays in Kenya, kila era ya parliament, the 13th parliament iko na turnover kubwa sana. Also the 12th parliament. So Kenyans are becoming, tumeshanuka. There is no MP who will underperform atarudi hata huwe na pesa gani. Because we saw like the other time, some MPs would come with financial muscle na bado walikuwa wanaangushwa. Because even if we continue making noise along the streets, in our parliament and in our county assemblies. So I really like the debate that happened today. And yes, the positions of the youth and the siasa za appointments, the favorism, nepotism, whatever, that has got to happen. Gerald, we cannot run away from that. There is no, even what Gachagua said, and we look at Rigathi Gachagua, he's going to be saying all those things that we are uncomfortable at. Even the Uhuru government had its Rigathi, somebody who was saying the uncomfortable things. Even the Raila side has their Rigathi, somebody who says all those things you are afraid to say. That priority has got to be given to people who already had the ideology of the current government in mind, and they accepted it before it was appointed. Because the same way, Charity Ngilu decided not to run for Kitui governor, saying, I'm going to be a PS in the Raila government. Sasa mimi singe expect mimi mso, Raila ameingia, Charity Ngilu akose kupewa CS, mimi nipewe, hata singeotea wapi hiyo. Those are things we expect. However, there are even people, and I'll say this out loud, there are a lot of people who are on the Hustler Nation side, the Kenya Kwanza side, who are complaining very much about the people from Azimio who've been nominated, isn't it? Yes. I think we are all in Kenya Kwanza, we got very salty. Unaona, huyo ni nani ameappointiwa na alikuwa mtu wa Azimio, na unakuta inatuuma, tunaulizana. There was a meeting tulikuwa jana jioni tunaulizana, did you see that list? Uliona watu wa Azimio hapo? Sasa sisi tunateta watu wa Kenya Kwanza. Azimio guys are complaining. So what will the government do? Ignore all of us and appoint whoever is going to be appointed by merit. However, I like the debate. I like the fact that us guys in Kenya Kwanza got really upset when some Azimio people got appointed. I like the fact that Azimio themselves got upset when Jalango went to State House. I like the fact that
it's a good cocktail of emotions from both sides.
Yes. And in fact, I like the fact that we all want to mark our territories. Azimio doesn't want their house interfered with. Kenya Kwanza doesn't want their house interfered with. That means we all have what? We all have that mindset that we need to protect our turf and we need to grow within our turf. So it is a debate that's going to go on for the next 5 years. Okay. And we hope that the powers that be are sober enough to be able to factor all of us. That even I, as a Kenya Kwanza person, I'm thinking, I would have preferred me to be picked over and above. Maybe Ruth asichukuliwe, mimi nichukuliwe. But if I look at Ruth now, honestly, there are some strengths she has that I don't have. There is a way she can perform that I can't. So nitateta, I will beat in my house. I'm thinking, akiwa dem, maybe alichukuliwa because ni mrembo kunishinda. But because I know obviously she's smarter than me.
Okay.
Yes. So, Gerald, let us be more tolerant. What I wanted to put it out, because I've seen both of them, the both panelists, they have a point. They have a very good point that yes, we need to give government some room to breathe, but also that positive criticism that Ruth has really pushed forward, we have to have it so that we don't have a lax government. Okay. And also the Ruto government is allowing for that criticism. Si kama time ya Uhuru ungeongea vibaya, my friend, ulikuwa unakujua hapo na sina matiani. So the good thing is that I know Ruth's voice is going to be heard, like that the government is doing things in a stupid way. It was itaenda, and then unajua wale watu watch the tackle ni wale wakubwa. Gerald. So yeah, so the voice is going to be heard. So let us be tolerant and let us continue pushing that youth agenda that this Moses Kuria calls it the walking stick politics. You know, politics is a walking stick that unakuta great grandfathers are the ones who are being appointed to some jobs that we can be able to do better than them. That thing needs to be pushed to a point. Okay. Isn't it, Gerald?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Santa Sana. I'm so a good day.
You're welcome. All right, cheers.
Thank you so much for calling in. All right. That's Muso. She's spoken strongly on the conversations that you guys have had this morning. All right, let's have your tackles of the day. It's how many minutes past? It's 6 minutes past 9:30. All right. Take you in or do you? Your tackle of the day.
We went to the election. We have a government. So far, the government has not done anything outside the constitution. The government starts with us. And the government ends with us,
Okay.
whether we like it or not. We need to embrace that fact. Let's come together, support the government in our own spaces. Before we even speak about political appointments and everything, we have professionals, we have business people. Let the farmers do the farming. Let the professionals do the professional stuff. Let the people who are employed be employed. Not all of us can fit in that government basket. So let's contribute our part. The government is there to serve us. It's our duty to give it ideas. I also want to tell Kenyans that those ideas can only get to parliament if you engage with your MP. Engage with your leaders, and they will give you the service that you deserve. At the moment, to Enasubra, the government has not even had its single harvest. It doesn't have a budget. So we should also have a basic understanding of how government operates. So that when we criticize, let's criticize from an informed perspective. It enriches the conversation and helps us to grow.
I think for me, what is my parting shot for the day is that this government really needs to sit down and relook its priorities in terms of where they spend money and where they ought not to spend money. Kenyans right now are at a position where we are, hungry, we are angry, we are wondering where the next meal of the day will come from. As of today morning, I've just read from a friend that the prices of unga have actually spiked to 300 shillings this particular morning. And when we start hearing stories of State House wanting to increase their expenditure...
It was 300, this including Coca-Cola. It was a package of unga and Coca-Cola. Mwache propaganda pia.
Uko ni wapi uko tuende?
Ukishakulego ugali unateremsha na soda.
Unateremsha na soda because we will not even have money to buy escort ya hiyo ugali. So basically, I think for us as a country right now, we are at a point where we must relook our priorities as a nation, where we spend money, where we ought not to spend money. The very many unnecessary prayer meetings that the government subjects Kenyans to need to stop, because at the end of the day, those meetings actually take money. I wish Kenyans would just begin to interrogate how much money is spent in organizing a single state function. State functions are functions that take a lot of money and resources that ought to be redirected to other priorities. Kenyans feel insulted when their ministers, instead of offering solutions to the current hunger problem that we have, tell us that we need to contribute and donate food to other countries that are suffering the same, problems that we do suffer as a nation. So we must prioritize taking care of the interests of the Mwananchi first over and above anything else.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you. And every tackler who's joined us online as well. And the caller, I'm so known he was called in today. So it's a pleasure to have you. This has been the Siasa Wednesday edition of the 22nd of February 2023. And we've been having a question around the politics of the country and other developments around leadership. Until tomorrow on Diaspora Edition, I wish you a very good day. Please make sure that you can join Kinarama tomorrow on the Diaspora Edition. Make sure that you are there, the Diaspora Edition tomorrow, led by Chairman Gerald Rama, Kina Sergeant watakuwa hapo, Kina Miss watakuwa hapo, Miss Lane. A lot of number of guys that Kina Bwambok will be in tomorrow on Diaspora Edition. If you are diaspora, and also please make sure that you can join that conversation and ensure that you can be part of the running of this nation. Until tomorrow on the Diaspora Edition, and I see you on Friday on Sharia Wiki Edition. I wish you a very good day. Take care and bye-bye.